Routing is an essential part in any React application, and React Router version 6 is out, and I'm gonna teach you the basics in this tutorial. And if you like my stuff, please subscribe and click that notification button, and I will be so super happy, you know it. And yeah, probably nothing more to say here, so let's get started. All right, we're going to start this tutorial with part 1 naturally. So we're going to kick this off by installing React Router version 6 and also set it up in our application. So what I've done here is that I've created a little Vite installation here with my React app. So I only have this app.tsx where I just type out React Router version 6 week. So we're going to use this installation to modify everything to use React Router version 6. And if we look here at this page, reactrouter.com, they tell you everything about React Router. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install this library, the first thing I do. So in my console, I'm going to break this app. No, I'm not going to break the app, but I'm going to break the dev server that's running the app. All right, then we're going to npm install, and we can see here what we have to do. We have this little command here, npm install React Router DOM at 6. So I can just copy and paste this one in like this. So we install the library. And that's everything you have to install to get this up and running. We don't need to do anything more. So I type in npm run dev to start up my dev server again. So just let's see that it works. And it works. So we're good to go. So I go back to my code editor. In my case, it's Visual Studio Code, and the theme is one monoK 80s. I get a lot of questions about that. So that's my theme. So in the main component where we have this initialization of the application, I'm going to import some stuff here. So I import browser router. I like to rename it router, so I can import it as router. You don't need to do it if you don't want that name. Otherwise, you can use browser router as it is. And then we need to wrap our application with this router. So I set it up like this. And this will wrap the complete application and provide it with the router so that we can use all the routes and good stuff from React Router version 6 in our application. So what we're also going to do here is we're going to scaffold out some stuff in our app component for us to work with when we try out all the good stuff from React Router. I've already created this little empty component here. So I create a component that's called app, and I type out this text here. But I have to do something more here. I need to import some stuff. Import. We're going to need routes. We're going to need a route and a link from React Router DOM. All right. Then we're going to create a few components. And as always, I'm going to use some Star Wars references here because you know that I usually do that in my tutorials, and I think it will work here too. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to create 5 components. So we create 5 new files. One that's called empire.tsx. And one that's called jedi.tsx. We have one that's called luke.tsx. And we have one that's called nothing.tsx. So we're actually going to create 6 components. And we have a component that's called rebel.tsx. And the last one is going to be yoda.tsx. And I'm actually going to move them inside a folder that I call components. So grab them here, all the ones that we created, and drag them inside of that component. And then we can scaffold some stuff out. Yeah, shouldn't move the main. Of course. There it is, Yoda. Okay, and if we look in the app, we have this little scaffold out component. So what I'm doing here, I'm pasting it in. I rename it to Empire like this. So I'm essentially just creating an empty component. I save the file, and I do the same for Jedi. Actually change the text here also. Jedi Empire, I should say Empire. Luke. Change the text. Save it, nothing. Should say nothing, and this is going to be the fallback component when we can't match a route. Rebel. Like this, and Yoda. Right. So that's actually it for our setup in this little tutorial. In the next part, we're going to talk about how to create some basic routes and also how to link to these routes. Okay, we're going to create some basic routes in this part of the tutorial, and we're going to be in the app component. So we're going to continue on here, and first we're going to import all of our components. Import Jedi from / components Jedi. We're going to need the Empire from / components Empire. We're going to need the Rebel / components Rebel. We import the Yoda from / components Yoda. Yeah, not emo something. Import. And we import Luke from / components Luke. And the last one is going to be import nothing from / components nothing. Remove .tsx. And that's the components that we're going to use. So I'm going to change this one here a little bit. First, I'm going to wrap it in parentheses. I'm going to use a React fragment here to wrap stuff in. Something like this. And first, I'm going to create the routes. So what we can do here is we imported this component here from React Routed DOM. So instead of this div here, I'm going to use this component, routes. And inside of this routes component, we have our route. So first, it's a component for multiple routes, and that's where you wrap all the routes that you have. Then we create separate routes, and we use to route the singular route for that one. So we use this component route, and we're going to create our first route. And we have a prop that's called path. And in this case, I wanted to go to the Jedi component. So I want the path that's called / Jedi, and you don't need to use / or anything like this. You can just type in Jedi, just a regular string with Jedi for the path. And then we provide it with the element, curly brackets, and then we have our component, Jedi, like this. And we have to end this route also, end fragment there also. So that's our first route. Then we create the second route. We're going to have 3 routes for now. So we have the path. For this one, it's going to be Empire. And the element is going to be the Empire. And we have the last route. The path is going to be Rebel. And the element is going to be the Rebel element, of course. And we also have to close these components, of course, like this. So that's our routes, and we can try this out in our app now, Jedi, Empire, and Rebel. So if I go back to my browser, this is strange. Why is it complaining? Yeah, I forgot to save this main component here. So yeah, I usually forget to save my components, and I get a lot of you saying that you should have autosave and stuff. And yeah, maybe I should consider that one. So nothing wrong here. The application works, and we can try this out. / Jedi, and you can see that we have the Jedi component / Rebel. It works. So we have our routes. That's great, but we don't have any way to navigate to these routes. So we're going to create that one also. So inside app component, just above the routes, I create a div. And then if we look up here, you can see that I imported the link component, and that's the one that you use when you want to create a link. So link, and it takes a to prop. In this case, we're going to go to the Jedi, no / or anything here. So this one will wrap what we want to link. In this case, it's going to be a p tag that says Jedi page. So do it one more time, the link to, and it's going to link to the Empire page. A p tag that says Empire page. And we can do one more, so we have links to all the pages. Link, it's going to go to the Rebel page. And we have a p tag that says Rebel page. Save the component, go back to the browser, and you can see that we have the pages here. So if I click on them here, these are the pages. This actually changes because the menu is going to be on all the pages. Just because we have the routes here below our menu, it only changed the pages inside of the routes component. So it seems to be working, and that's pretty good actually. So that's simple routes. Usually you don't need anything more than this if you have a very simple application, but we're going to go through some more concepts and stuff before we're finished with this tutorial. So in the next video, we're going to talk a little bit about nested routes. Okay, we have our routes, so we're going to create some nested routes in this video. So let's start off by, let's say that we want some nested routes inside of the Jedi component. So go inside the components and Jedi, and we have to do some stuff with this one here. We're going to need some stuff from React Router. So import, we're going to need a link. We're going to need something that's called an outlet. I'm going to talk about that later. We're going to need a routes component and a route from React Router DOM, right? And then we need some components. So import Yoda from /Yoda. And we're also going to need, I think we're going to use the Luke from Yoda /, not from Yoda, from Luke, of course. And also the nothing, I think, yeah, we're going to use nothing here from /nothing. All right, that's the component that we need. And we can modify this component a little bit. Instead of this just saying Jedi here, we're going to have a p tag that says this is the Jedi page. Then we're going to create some links. We have a link to, it's going to go to the Yoda page. We have a p tag that says Yoda. And we have another link to Luke. P tag that says Luke. And that's our links for now. Then we're going to nest some routes here, and you can have as many as these routes you want inside of your application. You can only have one that's called router here, the browser router. You can only have one router to wrap your application. So we can create as many routes as we want. So I'm going to use the routes, the one with the S, and then I create a route. It's going to be Yoda, and this one is going to be nested, but these routes are relative. So this one is going to be Jedi /Yoda, but we just have to type out Yoda because they are relative. So they are relative to its parent route, so to say. So we have the element Yoda like this. So we end it. Then we have another route path is going to go to Luke. And we have the element Luke. And we end it. So that's it for our routes. Let's save this one. And we go back to the application. And we go to the Jedi page. You can see that this is the Jedi page. And we have the new links that we created here. And you can see now that it complains here. You render descendant routes or called use routes, blah, 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 Jedi under route, path Jedi. Yeah, we did that. But the route path has no trailing asterisk. So, okay, let's do that. So go inside the app component and Jedi. If we have descendant routes, we need to have a / and an asterisk. Otherwise, it will complain and the routes won't render. So we can actually try that out. I'm going to remove it again. And if we click those links here, And it says that no routes matched location Jedi /Yoda. But if we add that little / and asterisk in and save it, you can see that it render out page. So that's great. We need to have that one when we have nested routes like this in this component here. So this is one way of doing it. I'm going to show you another way to do this. And that's when I'm going to use this component that's called outlet. So first, these routes here, I'm going to grab them, copy them, go back to my app component, and I'm going to wrap them inside of the route for the Jedi here, like this. We don't need this asterisk now. We can remove the / and the asterisk. So I've nested these routes inside of here, and it is pretty sweet, I think, because it gives you a very good overview of your application. You can clearly see that we have a Jedi, and this Jedi page has 2 child routes. So that's pretty neat, I think. I really like this way of creating the routes. So save it. We're not finished here. Go back to the Jedi, remove everything here that has to do with the routes. We need to use the outlet. This outlet component tells React where to render out the routes. So if we don't have this outlet, it won't know where to render out those nested routes that we created here. So that's very important to actually use this component here. Otherwise, it won't show up. So I go back to the application. Let's try it out. Reload it just in case. You can see that I'm at Jedi Luke and Jedi Yoda. It works exactly the same, but we have all the routes collected here in one place, and that's pretty sweet. I had this example just in the days now when I worked on the application for my client. There were routes everywhere in the application. It was very hard to follow. So I moved them out inside of one component only, and I had all the routes so I can clearly see the structure of the application. So that's pretty sweet, and it works great, I think. All right, so that's nested routes. In the next video, I'm going to talk a little about URL params and also the hook that's called useParams. Okay, we've already talked about routes and nested routes, but you also very often, I would say, need to send something along to the route with a route param. For example, here, if we have the Luke page, you have a / and you may have some ID or something, and now it won't find anything because that route doesn't exist. If we want to do that, we need to use some params here in this URL. So that's what we're going to talk about now. So I go back to the code editor inside the app component. We have this route here for Luke. So I'm going to nest some other stuff here now. So instead of self-closing it, I'm going to nest in another route here. So I create a route. The path is going to be, and this one is relative to the Luke because I nest it inside of that route. So we don't need to have any / or anything. And we need to use an URL param. And you do that by have a colon. And then we can name our param. I could call it URL data. You can call it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. We have the element. And it's going to be the same Luke component. I'm going to modify that a little bit like this. So this is how you specify that this one is going to be a URL param. You have a colon in front of it. And that means that we can grab this URL data param inside of the Luke component. And this is also pretty sweet. Yet again, you can see that you get a really good structure here of your application where you can nest them in like this and have them in one place. I really like this stuff. All right, so let's go to the Luke component. I'm going to import some stuff here. I'm going to import useParams from React Router DOM. All right, and we need to restructure some things here. We can't do an implicit return. So this one is going to have a return statement, and it's going to be wrapped inside of curly brackets. Do some auto formatting, and it should work. So we have this hook that's called useParams, and you use this hook to grab the params from the URL. So const params, I call the useParams hook like this, and we can change some stuff here. Instead of just saying Luke, this is the Luke, and then we can, from the params, we can grab our URL param that we specified. We called it URL data page. We can also console log out the params like this. It won't work now because we haven't actually sent something along with a link to this page. So if we go to the Jedi component, that's where we link to the Luke, for example. We just link to Luke, but we want to send along something to the param. So I have a /, and in this case, I'm going to send along Skywalker. So let's try this out. We're on the Rebel page. Let's go to the Jedi page, and I'm going to link to the Luke. So we're at /Jedi /Luke /Skywalker. And you can see that it successfully grabs this URL param here and type it out for us in the Luke component. So I can type out whatever I want here. And you can see that it changed here. It grabs it from the URL params. And here are the one that I console logged out. We have the URL data like this. And you can see that it's in an object with the property of the URL param. So just to be very, very clear here, I'm going to go to my app. We can change this to some other stuff here, some other stuff. So we name this param some other stuff. I go to the Luke. It's very important that it has the same name here when I use it. Some other stuff like this. I go back to my application, reload it. You can see that now it's named some other stuff. And it works exactly the same. So this is how you pass around values to your different routes. And it works pretty smooth, I think. So this is the hook, use params, and also how you create URL params in your application. In the next video, we're going to look at the useLocation hook, the useNavigate hook, and some imperative navigation also. So we're going to talk a little about some hooks here now that's included inside of the React Router library. And we have a hook that's called useLocation and useNavigate. So I'm still going to be inside of the Luke component for this one, and I'm going to add in some imports here. So we have useLocation, useNavigate, and we also have a component that's called Navigate that I'm going to talk about. So let's use this stuff here inside of the component. First, we have our params. Let's leave everything as it is. Const location. I call the useLocation hook. I'm also going to console log out the location. Then we have our hook that's called useNavigate. So const navigate equal useNavigate. So what do we use this one for example, the navigate and the location? Well, sometimes you need to redirect your users, and you also want to know what page they were coming from. So we can use the location and the useLocation hook to actually keep track on what page the user was on before you went to the new route. And navigate and the useNavigate hook we can use to actually do the redirect. So I'm going to create a new function here, const handle click. And I'm going to call this navigate. That's the one that I get here when I call the useNavigate hook. It takes in a to-prop, and it also has some options here, the navigate options. So you can specify if you don't want to keep the previous history and stuff. But in our case, we're going to have a plain navigation to the Empire page when we click something. And we need to have a button for this. So we wrap this text here inside of a p tag. Then below, we're going to have a button with an on-click handler, and we're going to call the handle click. And let it say navigate to Empire. Right. Let's go back to the application. You can see that we have this button here. So if we click this one, we hopefully will go to the Empire page. Yeah, it didn't work at all, as you can see here, because it thinks that this is the URL param. And I wanted to show this because in this case, you need to have a /. Otherwise, it will be relative here and it won't work. So let's try this out again. Let's go back to the Luke page and navigate to Empire. And now it works. You can see we have /Empire. So if we leave out this / here, it will be relative. But if we have the /, it will work as it should. So this is the imperative way of navigating away to another route. But we also have this component that's called navigate. So down below here, I'm going to have a state that's called redirect to Empire. I haven't created this one yet, so bear with me. I'm going to do that in a second. Then I have the navigate component to, just as before, I navigate to the Empire. And if redirect to Empire isn't true, I'm going to return nothing. So this component is only going to be rendered if this one is true. So I have to create a state, const redirect to Empire, set redirect to Empire equal react.useState. We set it to false initially. And I also need to import React for this one. Import React from React. All right, so we have that state. So when we click this, we're going to call this handle click, but this one isn't working now because it's saying that it should navigate away. So I'm going to create another one for this one, and I'll comment this one out. Const handle click. And this handle click is going to set redirect to Empire to true. So first, this one here, redirect to Empire, is going to be false. And that means that we don't render this component here. It will only render when we click this button. So just as before, we need to click the button to navigate away. And this is a declarative way, and the other one was the imperative way. I like this one a lot, actually. So we go to the Jedi page, to the Luke page, and navigate to Empire. And you can see that it works just as before. And here you can see that I also console log out the location that we get from the useLocation hook. So we get some properties here. We have the hash, we have a key that's created, we have the full path name, we have the search, if we have had any search parameters in this one, and we have something that's called state. And what is that? Yeah, we can send along a state from the previous route. So in this navigate component here, we have a prop that's called state. And let's say that we want to keep track on where the user came from. So from route, you can have what you want here in this state. So I'm creating an object with a property that's called from route, and I'm going to send along the complete location object. So this is the one here that I grabbed from the useLocation. I pass that along to the route by the state prop. So let's save this one and go back. I reload it just in case. Jedi page, Luke page, and navigate to Empire. So if we look here at the location, we actually don't have a state. Yeah, and that's because, of course, I have to console log this state out in the Empire component, not in the Luke component, because we're navigating to the Empire component. So up here, I'm yet again going to import useLocation from React Router DOM. All right. So this one is going to go inside of parentheses and return. I have curly brackets and const location equal useLocation like this. And then I can console log out the location for that route. All right. Let's save it and go back to the application. Let's do it all over again. Jedi page, Luke, and then we navigate to the Empire page. And now we can look at this location here. And here you can see that we have the state. So we have the from route that I created. And we have the path name. We know that we clicked from this path here. So that's great. We can keep track. For example, if we have a login page or something where the user should log in, we can route them back to that page that they were on earlier. All right, that pretty much covers the useLocation and the useNavigate and the navigate component. In the next video, I'm going to talk about fallback routes. So let's talk a little about index routes and fallback routes for this one. If we check out the application, you can see that, for example, when I go to the Jedi page, we're not actually showing something here. We don't have a route. Let's say that we have a route that we want to be shown when we go to the Jedi page. We're showing, of course, this ones that's actually on the Jedi page. If we look at it here, we are rendering out the links here. So that works pretty much as we expect it to. But let's say that we want to show, for example, the Yoda page also when we go to only the route that's called Jedi here. Because now we have to click on Yoda and we have Jedi /Yoda, but we may want to show some default route here when we go to the Jedi page. So we can do that by specifying here. I'm specifying it in this app component now. So you can see that we have the route Jedi. So let's grab this Yoda route, paste it in above, remove the path and specify it as an index page, save it, go back to the application. You can see that it says Yoda. So when we're at Jedi, it also renders out the Yoda as the default route for this one. We still have the Yoda page, of course, Jedi/Yoda and Luke, but the Jedi page will always render out the Yoda page also because we specify this as the index route here. So that's pretty sweet if you want to have some default stuff show before you selected something else. Okay, so that's a default route, but how do we specify if we have a route that doesn't exist? For example, if we type in Jedi/ something like this, no routes match the location. Okay, yeah, that's pretty natural because we don't have that route. So what do we do if the user specifies a route that doesn't exist? You can see here, up here somewhere, I'm going to import. Yeah, I'm already importing the nothing component. Okay, so that's great. So let's stay in the Jedi component. I'm going to be in the nested route for the Jedi. So I create a new route with a path. And this path is going to be just an asterisk that tells React Router that every other route that it can't find, use this component instead. So we specify the element to nothing. We close this route and we can try it out. Okay, so you can see that it's already rendering out nothing. So now we can essentially type in whatever we want here and it will always render the nothing component if the route doesn't exist. So that's pretty good to know, otherwise the application will break and it will say that this, as you saw here, it can't find the route. So it can't always have a fallback route if the user navigates somewhere that it shouldn't navigate to. So that's fallback routes for the Jedi page. I'm going to try it one more time here just because it's so cool and it's showing nothing. So that's the fallback route. And you also have the default route here that shows Yoda. And that's pretty good to know how you handle this stuff in React Router. So that's everything there is for this video. In the next video, I'm going to talk about how to create some search params. I have one more thing that I want to talk about in this tutorial, and that is search params. Search params are something that you can see very often in the routes. For example, you have a question mark and you have a param and you have some value, and then you have an ampersand and you have another and you have some value. So these are search params. It's not the same as the URL params because URL params are part of the URL. These ones are just added to the URL after the question mark. So we're going to talk about these search params, and it's very good if you have a form, for example, where you fill something in and going to send it away to an endpoint, to an API or something else. All right. So let's do this. I'm going to be inside of I think I'm going to use the Rebel component for this one. So first I'm going to import a hook that's called useSearchParams from React Router DOM. All right. Then I'm going to do the same stuff that I did before. This one is getting wrapped in parentheses and a return statement. We make an explicit return instead. That's what we're doing here because we need to do some stuff up here. So this useSearchParams hooks works almost the same as the state in React. We get the search params and we also get a setter for the search params. So const search params set search params equal useSearchParams. All right. And I'm going to create a couple of search params for this one, but first we need a button also. So return, we're going to return, we're going to remove Rebel and have a p tag. This is the Rebel page. And down below, we're going to have a button with an on-click handler that's going to call a function that's called handle click. Set search params. All right. Okay. So const handle click. We're going to call the set search params that we have up here. And we're going to set some search params. And this one takes in a regular object where you can set whatever search params you want. So we create an object. I want to set the ship to be an X-wing. And we can also set the base location, the rebel base location, to be Hoth. All right, let's save this and see if it works. We go to the rebel page, set search params. And you can see they instantly gets added to this URL up here. So it seems to be working, but how do we retrieve them? How do we use them in our application? Well, we have them in these search params, and I'm just going to console log them out so we can see them. Console log, search params. And this is very important. We can't just grab them with a dot and what they call, because this is a URL params object. So we have dot get, very important to use get. And then we have parentheses, and we have a string with the name of the param that we want to get. And we had one that we called ship. And then we have the base location, console log, search params, get base location. Save it and go back to our application. You can see that it actually console logs them out for us. So that's how you grab them inside of your application. You call the use search params hook and you grab them like this in your components. So that's pretty much it with the search params. And it also concludes this tutorial in React Router version 6. I think it's great, and I've used the React Router a lot, but there's also starting to emerge other libraries out there. And I think especially the React Location is a very, very interesting library by Tanner Linsley that also created the React Query library, for example. So that's something I'm going to look more into and see how it works. You can, for example, pre-grab your data before you render out the route and stuff in that library very easily. So who knows, maybe I create a video on that also. But for now, this is the tutorial on React Router version 6. And thank you for watching these videos. And if you want to support me, please click the subscribe button and hit that notification button also. And I will be very grateful. So see you in another one.